It's wild to think about how quickly we've gone from, typing a question into Google and getting a list of links to now having AI just pop up with answers, sometimes before you even click anything.
Yeah, the whole information landscape is just shifting under our feet constantly.
So today, we wanted to take a really close look at the evolving role of AI in our lives. Not just the theory, but how real people are actually bumping into it and using it day to day.
Exactly. And to really get a handle on what's happening, on the ground, we pulled together a whole bunch of different perspectives.
Okay.
We've got this really lively discussion from older adults over on Reddit. There's research into how our brains physically respond to AI chatbots.
Wow.
Academic studies on who's using these big language models and why, a survey looking at healthcare professionals' experiences,
Right.
a look at the trend of AI search summaries, and even studies exploring if AI could, provide emotional support.
So quite a mix.
Yeah.
Our goal today, then, is to kind of cut through all that noise, pull out the key insights. We want to understand how AI is being received, how it's being used by different groups, and basically give you a clear picture without you feeling totally bogged down in detail.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Where should we start? Maybe with those older adults on Reddit?
Yeah, let's do that. We found this fascinating thread in the Ask Old People subreddit. It started with a pretty simple question. Do older people especially like AI?
Why that question?
Well, the person asking had noticed that videos showcasing AI seemed to get a lot of viewers, like 55 and over, but oh man, the responses that came back were incredibly varied.
Yeah, I bet. Definitely not a simple yes or no answer.
Not at all. You had some users expressing concerns that sounded like straight out of classic sci-fi.
Where the thinking machine's taking over.
Exactly. One user, M59, literally said they didn't want thinking machines making decisions. Another quoted Frank Herbert, from Dune, about machines enslaving people, calling it a potential new Dark Ages.
Wow, that's intense. Pretty deep-seated fears there.
Definitely. And it wasn't just about some far-off future. Some people had more immediate worries. Like one user, same music 4 CS7, was concerned AI could make us all mentally lazy, less connected to reality, just relying too much on the tech.
Yeah, I can see that. Did anyone have a lighter take? Sometimes humor helps with this stuff.
Oh, for sure. There was some good banter. Users joking about the apex of civilization being the day before ChatGPT dropped.
Right.
Which then led to this funny debate about what the real peak was. Was it AOL, CompuServe, smartphones? It's that classic thing of looking back, wondering if things were simpler.
Totally. It's how we process these huge shifts, I guess, putting them in context.
And one user, Turgulator, had this really thoughtful comment. They talked about how the internet, maybe it didn't make everyone super literate like some hoped, but it became this constant source of stimulation.
Interesting.
And the same user mentioned how the internet actually fueled their own self-education. Like they taught themselves chemistry, biology, neuroscience, electronics, even music theory online.
Yeah.
So it's complex.
That's a great point. It's not just a distraction. It can be a really powerful learning tool, too. What about the classic, they said that about argument? Did that come up?
Oh, yeah. Kevlash listed off a bunch of things, TV, microwave stuff that caused anxiety when it first appeared.
Right, the usual suspects.
But then someone else, Iroyathon, pushed back saying, okay, but what about things like writing skills, critical thinking? Especially for college students, are those being affected?
That's a fair question. And it taps into another theme you mentioned, right? It's just a general unease about how fast this is all happening.
Exactly. A user named LocalGyro55 was really direct, said they actively dislike AI and find the whole rush to embrace it creepy.
Creepy.
And that feeling came up again. Someone else, Candlelight and Coco, talked about learning to spot AI art or writing because it just feels off sometimes, imperfect, and worried about creative work being stolen or used without permission.
Yeah, the impact on artists and writers is a huge piece of this. Were there other really strong negative views?
Definitely. Damn Good Marmalade called AI flat out unethical and harmful. Just a strong dislike for the whole concept.
Okay, so real ethical concerns.
And those sci-fi fears popped up again, too. Artemis Jones 88 worried AI makes things way too easy, hinting at those dystopian futures.
Right.
And Introspective Lawyer, who just retired from tech, admitted having this gut feeling AI could be incredibly dangerous. So they've mostly ignored it since retiring.
Wow. Coming from someone in the field, that's telling.
And then you had others just feeling resigned, like Shoehorse13, who didn't really see AI as an improvement, but felt like, what can you do? It's coming anyway.
A sense of inevitability. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, was it? Were there positive takes?
Oh, absolutely. There was some real enthusiasm, too. Walking Horse, who actually programmed machine language way back when,
Oh, wow.
loves how AI helps them publish their website quickly, though, funny enough, they also called AI absolute idiocy. So,
Yeah.
even enthusiasts can see the flaws.
Love that. A mix of frustration and utility.
Exactly. And then you had Mary P914, who was just not interested. Felt people should just create their own stuff, period.
Fair enough. Valuing that human element.
Okay.
What about convenience? Was that a factor for people who did like it?
For sure. Astropin mentioned using LLMs just to get quick answers, instead of digging through pages of search results.
Yeah, I get that.
And Long Duck Dong, 1974, age 50, saw endless possibilities, both exciting stuff and worrying stuff, especially about jobs. That mix of hope and fear kept coming up.
It definitely seems like a common thread. Any purely neutral stances?
Yeah, My Dog Still Loves Me was kind of neutral, just hoping it wouldn't mess with jobs or wages. But then, countering that, I might Bafinoff this called it computerized plagiarism. Very direct.
Oof. Plagiarism. That hits hard on the originality concern again.
Right. And then things got even more nuanced. One user, their account was deleted later, but they defended AI's creative potential, saying it's not just copying. They talked about future AI trained on synthetic data and framed the whole fear of AI thing in terms of who controls it, like worrying about misuse by authoritarian groups. This same person also shared positive uses coding, research, highlighting that duality.
That's a really complex take, covering creativity, data ownership, politics. What else?
Another user worried about AI perpetuating stereotypes. Big issue, right? Bias in the system.
Absolutely. Crucial point.
Someone else found AI music kind of funny, amusing, but wouldn't actually buy it. Like, it's a novelty, not real art, maybe.
Interesting distinction. Entertainment versus value.
Yeah. And then just plain dislike. Newvert's Glove, 62, just said, no, I hate it. Simple as that.
Can't get much clearer.
Photon Femme uses it as a Google alternative sometimes. Shibber18 likes it for cleaning up emails and texts, but making sure it still sounds like them.
Maintaining personal voice. That's key.
And a bit of humor again. HoppyThin64 got a kick out of Elon Musk naming his AI Colossus, referencing that old movie, The Forbin Project.
A little sci-fi nod there. Any examples of spouses or partners using it?
Yep, BDR mentioned their wife, who's around 60, loves ChatGPT for getting quick info.
Okay, so positive experience there.
But that contrasts sharply with old Farmjoy, who felt AI is becoming a crutch, especially for younger people, hindering their thinking.
The crutch argument.
And Rojodi, who used to work on AI in games. Just a flat hell no.
Okay, strong opinions from people with experience.
And then Big Ad 69768 tech background, uses AI for investment research, sees potential in things like airline pricing, self-driving cars.
Right, practical application.
But also pointed out a serious problem. Seeing fake financial endorsements using AI on Facebook, stuff Meta wasn't catching, which highlights the whole misinformation danger.
That's a really concrete example of the risks. What about people just dipping their toes in?
Yeah, a few like that. Thalian Alfarin was just starting to experiment with chatbots. Reese's Big Cup was playing with AI music, saw potential, even if it's not perfect yet.
Cautious exploration.
Ali Sama stressed it should be a tool, not replace humans. I Am Trick, 55+A, found it interesting, but kind of error-prone, not super useful yet.
Accuracy again. That seems critical.
And creativity popped up again. Any external 622158 uses Midjourney a lot for visuals, loves it, but finds ChatGPT less helpful for creative writing.
Interesting split there between visual and text generation.
And another deleted user was really upset about AI art impacting crafters, like seeing AI designs replacing original artists on Etsy.
Oh man, that hits home for small creators. Tangible impact.
Definitely. Natalkalot, 63, mentioned agreeing with Jeffrey Hinton, one of the godfathers of AI, about the potential dangers. Suggests some are following the deeper discussions.
Keeping up with the experts' warnings.
Bengay29 just found it entertaining. Yarnslinger works with AI, but finds it too unreliable for everyday stuff, especially factual accuracy.
So even people working with it see the limitations. But what about positive practical uses? Did those come up?
Yes, absolutely. Rex Celestis uses it heavily in meetings notes, coaching their speaking style, critiquing writing. Big time saver.
That sounds genuinely useful.
Jisong 12371 uses ChatGPT to help structure thoughts and AI to clean up voice transcriptions. And a medical librarian, 68, Stunning N3487, was impressed by AI's ability to synthesize data, but totally frustrated because it kept making up fake citations.
The hallucination problem. Makes it useless in fields where sources are critical.
Exactly. Human 23 worried less about the tech itself, more about the direction society's taking with it, the need for a moral framework.
A bigger picture concern.
My four floofs, 52, absolutely loves it. Improves writing, boosts creativity, saves email time, doesn't care if it's seen as lazy, also enjoys spotting the flaws in AI art.
Embracing it fully, flaws and all.
Kirabi, 62, likes it, sees the productivity potential, but can't use it at work yet. We even had a 55-year-old who designs AI servers saying they liked it.
Someone building the infrastructure itself.
Puts Factor, 70, uses it daily for creative tasks, research. Slight to Matillo, 9581, 65, just finds it pretty interesting.
There's a real range right up to daily integration.
And a final hopeful note from Isla for babies, believing AI won't necessarily make us lazy or dumb, that human desire to know things will persist.
Okay, wow, that is a lot of different viewpoints from just one Reddit thread.
Yeah.
So, stepping back, what are the main things that jump out to you from all that?
Well, the biggest thing really is just how diverse the perspectives are. It completely blows up the idea that, age is the main thing determining how you feel about AI.
Right. It's not just old people hate it, young people love it.
Not at all. You've got tech-savvy older adults who are wary, younger folks who are skeptical. Those concerns about accuracy, ethics, societal impact, they cut across generations. But at the same time, lots of people are seeing the convenience, the productivity gains. Even if they still have some doubts, it's just way more nuanced than a simple divide.
Okay, so a really complex picture of real-world reactions. Now, this next bit sounds fascinating. You mentioned research looking at how our brains actually respond to AI, like on a physical level.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. This study used ERP's event-related potentials, basically measuring tiny electrical signals in the brain. They wanted to see if the perceived gender of a chatbot influences how we react and if our own gender plays a part.
Okay, perceived gender, so like how it sounds or how it's presented.
Exactly. And they measured brainwaves like the P100 and P200. What they found was that the female-presenting chatbots triggered larger P100 and P200 waves overall.
And what do those waves mean?
They're generally linked to attention. So bigger waves suggest people were allocating more attentional resources, basically paying more attention to the female chatbots compared to the male ones.
Interesting. Just generally more attention-grabbing. Did the participants' gender matter?
It did. Female participants showed even larger P100 and P200 waves when interacting with the female chatbots. This suggests not just more attention, but maybe more positive emotional engagement, too.
Okay, so women paying more attention to female bots. What about the men?
Male participants showed a larger N100 wave when interacting with the male chatbots. The N100 is more about that initial early stage of attention, like noticing the physical stimulus.
So men noticed the male bots more initially. Women engaged more deeply with the female bots. Kind of sounds like we're drawn to similarity, maybe.
That's exactly what the researchers suggested. It fits with this idea called the similarity attraction paradigm. But here's the twist.
Okay.
Despite those different attention patterns in the brainwaves, when they asked people afterwards using a questionnaire, both men and women said they had a greater intention to actually use the female chatbots.
Wait, really? So even if men's brains initially perked up more for the male bots, they still said they'd rather use the female ones.
Yep. It's an interesting disconnect. The brain might register similarity, but the conscious preference leaned towards the female bots, possibly because they were perceived as having traits like being friendlier or warmer.
Huh. So perception and maybe stereotypes about gender roles might override that initial neurological flicker of attention.
Could be. The P100 reflects early visual processing and attention, P200 is more tied to emotion and attention arousal, and N100 is that initial sensory attention. So men noticed male bots, N100. Women attended more and felt more positive towards female bots, P100, P200. But everyone preferred using female bots.
Fascinating. Any limitations we should keep in mind with this brainwave stuff?
Yeah, they mentioned a couple of things. One is that people's general emotional state during the EEG recording could have influenced the results. Hard to control for that perfectly.
Sure.
And also, the participants were mostly college students, pretty similar background, so generalizing these specific findings to everyone might be tricky.
Okay, got it. Still, really interesting glimpse into the subconscious reactions.
Yeah.
So moving from brainwaves to behavior, let's talk about who's actually using these big AI models, these LLMs, in their everyday lives.
Right. We looked at a research paper that surveyed people specifically on this. They wanted to see how things like age, gender, and importantly, someone's level of technology education impacted whether they used LLMs.
And then what did the survey demographics look like? Who are they talking to?
It was a pretty wide age range, actually, from 18 all the way up to 93, with the average age being around 46. Most participants identified as white and had at least a bachelor's degree. They noted some gender differences in why people used or didn't use them, but the main finding related to demographics was that older folks and those with less technical education were generally less likely to be users.
Okay, that aligns a bit with common assumptions, maybe. What were the main ways people said they were using these models?
They broke it down into a few categories. The biggest one, about a third of users, was for writing and content creation. Think drafting emails, blog posts, maybe even product descriptions for an Etsy store, like one user mentioned.
Practical writing help. Makes sense.
Yeah. Almost as popular, nearly another third was using them for information gathering and research, asking questions, searching, even help with math problems or analyzing data.
So like a super search engine or research assistant.
Exactly. Then smaller percentages use them for more creative stuff like writing fiction or poetry, summarizing or explaining complex topics, getting recommendations, help with social media messages, just chatting with the AI for companionship or brainstorming, and also for editing or proofreading.
Quite a spread of applications.
Yeah.
Now, what about the people who weren't using them? What held them back?
Several reasons came up. The most common, over a third of non-users, was simply preferring their own writing or significantly not trusting the output.
Lack of trust again.
Okay, about 20% worried about it being cheating or felt it would hinder their own creativity. Privacy and accuracy concerns were mentioned by about 14%.
Privacy and accuracy, those keep coming up.
They do. Around 11% felt they just didn't understand how to use them well enough or didn't really see a need for them in their lives. Ethical concerns were also a factor for some. And a small group just found the interaction too impersonal.
That really underscores the need for education, doesn't it? Helping people understand what these tools can and can't do and how to use them effectively.
Absolutely. The researchers really stressed that. They linked it to broader goals like quality education for all. They suggested things like starting tech and AI education earlier, having more nuanced discussions about the ethics in different situations, making it easier for users to check the accuracy addressing those hallucinations.
Oh, yeah, the made-up stuff.
Protecting privacy with clear opt-out options, and really positioning LLMs as tutors or assistants, not replacements for human thinking. That autonomy piece seems important.
Yeah, the assistant, not replacement idea feels key for broader acceptance. Okay, let's zoom in on one specific field, healthcare. How are LLMs being viewed there? It seems like a place with huge potential, but also significant risks.
Definitely. A study in JMIR surveyed healthcare professionals, students, and academics in related fields about this very topic.
And who are the early adopters versus the non-users in that group?
They found that the non-users were more likely to be older, female, and specifically those working directly as healthcare providers, like doctors or nurses on the front lines.
Interesting. And maybe age and direct experience influencing adoption rates. What were the big themes when they talked about the impact on human interaction in healthcare?
Three main ideas emerge. First, worries about fewer interactions, losing that crucial human touch, potentially eroding the patient-provider relationship, and even safety concerns if subtle cues are missed.
The loss of rapport. Yeah, that's critical in healthcare.
Second, though, was the potential for higher quality interactions. The idea that AI could handle routine tasks, freeing up professionals for more complex cases, allowing more meaningful time with patients when it's really needed, plus better access to information and maybe filling some care gaps.
So a potential trade-off. Less quantity maybe, but better quality in some interactions.
That was the hope expressed by some. And the third theme was just the idea that patient expectations might change as AI becomes more common in their care journey.
So a real mix again. Potential benefits in efficiency and knowledge access, but serious concerns about that irreplaceable human element. Trust and empathy are just so central there.
Exactly. And the researchers highlighted that these views fit with broader patterns of tech adoption, emphasizing that integrating these tools into healthcare needs to be done really carefully and thoughtfully.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift to another area where AI is becoming very visible. Search results.
Yeah.
Those AI summaries popping up at the top. How are people actually reacting to those?
We looked at a YouGov survey on this. It found most people notice them, about 2/3 see them at least sometimes, and a pretty decent chunk, 38%, say they actually read them in at least half their searches.
Okay, so people are definitely seeing them and engaging to some extent. Is everyone engaging equally?
Not really. There are some clear demographic splits. Younger folks, Gen Z, millennials plus men, and people in cities are much more likely to read them frequently.
Ah, the younger, urban, male demographic leading the charge again.
Seems to be the trend here. About 60% of Gen Z and millennials use them often, but only around 17% of baby boomers do. Men more than women, urban more than rural or suburban. It's quite a stark difference, especially between young urban men and, say, older women or rural residents.
Big contrasts. So while some are jumping on board, others are holding back. Do people find them useful at least?
Just over half said they find them at least somewhat helpful. But again, younger generations found them much more useful than older ones did.
Okay, usefulness varies. What about trust? That seems like the million-dollar question with AI summaries.
Yeah, trust is shaky. Only about 1 in 5 people actually think the AI summaries are more trustworthy than the traditional list of links.
Only 1 in 5. Wow.
That belief is strongest among Gen Z and millennials. But about a third of people think the AI summaries are less trustworthy. And that skepticism is higher among older groups and rural users. Interestingly, urban users were a bit more trusting.
So a significant trust deficit, particularly outside of younger urban groups. Does that translate into whether people want these summaries to be the default?
Pretty much. Only about 21% overall agreed that AI summaries should be the default way search works. Though, again, that number was much higher, over half among those young urban men.
It really sounds like AI search summaries are gaining a foothold with specific demographics, but widespread trust is still a major barrier to them becoming the standard way we search.
Exactly. Building that trust, proving the accuracy consistently, that seems essential for broader adoption.
Okay, one last area before we wrap up. And this was really intriguing. AI for emotional support. Can chatbots actually help with that?
It's a fascinating question. We looked at a study also in JMR that analyzed conversations people had with a chatbot called SimSimi. They compared users from Eastern and Western countries to see if culture played a role.
SimSimi. I think I remember that one. It was more for entertainment, right? Yeah. Not specifically therapy.
Right. It's an open domain chatbot, more for fun conversation. Which makes it interesting because it reflects how people might use any AI for emotional expression, not just one designed for therapy.
Right.
They used anonymous data, of course.
Okay, so what do they find comparing Eastern and Western users talking to this chatbot?
Some interesting cultural nuances. Users from Eastern countries tended to use language showing stronger overall emotions related to depression, like more sadness-related words.
Right.
But users from Western countries were actually more likely to talk openly about specific vulnerable topics, things like mental health struggles, and even taboo subjects like swearing or death.
That's a really interesting distinction. So different ways of expressing distress, maybe. One more general emotion, the other more specific, vulnerable topics.
It seems that way. And a really key finding was that, across the board, people seemed more willing to express vulnerability related to sadness or depression to the chatbot compared to how they might express it on social media.
So the AI feels like a safer, maybe more private space for those difficult feelings?
That's the implication. The conversations with SimSimi were also less about seeking advice for daily problems, unlike social media. It suggests users might see the chatbot more as a non-judgmental listener, a safe space to just vent or express things.
Like talking to a diary that talks back, almost.
Maybe something like that. And the study did mention other research showing that specialized therapy chatbots using techniques like CBT have actually helped reduce depression and anxiety symptoms. So there's potential in more structured approaches too.
Right. Did they look at the specific types of depressive feelings people expressed?
They did. Apathy and sadness were the most common categories for both Eastern and Western users. But Western users talked more often about social concerns, physical and mental health issues, and those sensitive topics.
Okay.
And comparing chatbot chats to Twitter, apathy and sadness were way more common with the chatbot. Things like negative self-image or relationship problems were more common on Twitter. The chatbots had a higher proportion of users seemingly seeking relief.
So again, suggesting the chatbot is seen as a more direct, private outlet specifically for feelings of sadness and wanting to feel better.
Exactly. It really highlights the potential, but also the cultural nuances of using AI in this very sensitive emotional space.
Wow. Okay, so we have covered a ton of ground here today. It feels like we've gone from broad societal views on Reddit right down to brainwaves and into specific uses in healthcare, search, and even emotional support.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey through how people are perceiving and actually interacting with AI right now.
We've seen that huge mix of reactions from older adults, the skepticism, the fear, but also some cautious adoption and real enthusiasm, contrasted with maybe more general enthusiasm, but still some caution from younger users, especially with things like search summaries.
And we saw how our brains might react differently based on perceived traits like gender, even if our conscious choices don't always match that initial reaction. Plus, the diverse reasons why people choose to use LLMs or choose not to. Trust, creativity, privacy concerns constantly bubbling up.
Right, those recurring themes, and how those play out so critically in fields like healthcare, where the human element is paramount. Then the whole changing landscape of search of the convenience versus trust issue with AI summaries.
And finally, that unexpected potential for AI as a space for emotional expression, though how people use it varies culturally. It's just clear that AI adoption and perception isn't simple. It's complex, influenced by age, gender, tech background, culture, you name it.
It really is a constantly shifting picture. The insights we've pulled together today feel like a really valuable snapshot of where things are right now, the good, the bad, and the complicated.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. As AI keeps weaving itself more tightly into our daily lives, how do we make sure its benefits are actually accessible and, maybe more importantly, trustworthy for everyone, regardless of their age or background?
Yeah, and what role do we each play in guiding this, in shaping how it's developed and used responsibly? It's definitely something to think about in our own interactions with AI and to keep exploring as these technologies continue to evolve so rapidly.